Christchurch Cathedral echoed with the sounds of Gabrielli, Schutz, Verdi, Vaughan Williams and Newcastle's own Peter Brock last night. The University Choir is preparing for its special performance, which will be sung in 4 languages. It's a historic concert, one including choral works from several centuries, from the 1500s to the 1990s compositions of conductor Peter Brock. Keith Murray Allen features on the organ, with a brass section accompanying the choir for a number of the works. The concert gets underway in Christchurch Cathedral at 8 o'clock on Saturday night.
These letters were sent to Mayor Marie Callaghan from children at Stanford Merthyr Infant School. They asked the Mayor not to let the proposed dross plant go ahead, saying that if it does, they and those around them will die.
2/3, maybe 3/4 of the letters tell me that they're going to die if the plant goes ahead. Now, how any adult could tell a child they're going to die is beyond me.
The letters, which were handwritten by the kindergarten and first-class students, also speak of explosions and chemical poisoning. Councillor Callaghan has spoken to the department of her concerns. As soon as it was made aware of the situation, the Department of Education sent a counsellor to the school to talk to the children about their apparent fears. School Principal Judith Collins would not talk to us on camera today. However, she did say the letters were an environmental exercise, denying that the children had been told what to write or that members of the action group had fed them information. Teachers at the school have been reprimanded by the department.
The Director of Schools has spoken with the Principal and will be speaking with the teachers. I'm not in a position to say to you what that action will be, but certainly we cannot accept that children can be used in this manner.
Resident Cole Maybury approached the school to write the letters. He says he has no misgivings.
This plant is a toxic plant and it can explode and it can poison people through its emissions.
Meanwhile, conflict over the dross plant may reach a head tonight when it is again voted on by Cessnock Council. Police have been asked to attend the meeting with fears it may become violent.
Having seen the violence, the defamation and the vandalism of this action group and the fact that they'd use tiny little children, nothing they would do would surprise me.
Performer Tony Johns has been singing songs about America for most of his professional career. He's now singing about Belmont, Maitland and the Barrington Tops.
It's not easy to sing about your own places when you're so used to singing about Colorado, Rocky Mountain High and all those sort of other places that have that romantic sound about them. But I want to give this area that same feel.
He's penned the tunes from his Belmont home, a good percentage of his inspiration just outside the window. Johns has put together an album of songs about the valley and he's taking that music to Tamworth in January for the Country Music Festival. The 35-year-old singer's greatest problem now is getting his music heard. He's on the hustings to get local radio stations to play his songs. Six months in preparation, the submission is a sizable document. It highlights a 3-year night's business plan.
It's a very lengthy, well-documented proposal that is essentially about asking the government for assistance with regards to the capital improvements and the financing costs that have been incurred by the Knights on a community facility.
The club is still reeling under a $2 million debt, with management putting that down to the cost of major improvements to their home ground at the International Sports Centre. Unlike most Winfield Cup competitors, the Newcastle Knights don't have a licensed club. Massive crowd support is their greatest asset. The Premier's office will study the submission for the $2.6 million. John Fay will visit later this month, and the club is hopeful he may bring with him some good news.
If we were lucky enough to get a yay on that day, we'll all be ready to celebrate.
Meanwhile, the club's coffers have been boosted by $230,000 from the Art Union. Just in case you missed the draw prior to the news, the winners were Ben Ashcroft from Stanford Merthyr, Mrs D Geary from Bulwarra Heights and B Merion from Glendale.
The Civil Aviation Authority decision not to renew Yanda's licence has left 2 planes stranded at Singleton Airport, 3 more around the state. The CAA won't specify what regulations the airline didn't comply with, but Shadow Minister for Transport John Sharp has no doubts why it was grounded.
They have failed to maintain their aircraft properly. They've failed to maintain proper flying operations procedures.
John Sharp and fellow National Party member Sandy McDonald questioned Yanda's safety 4 months ago. The CAA investigated and discovered some planes were being overloaded and irregularities in maintenance and operations manuals. But the authority said it does not believe the airworthiness matters with Yanda could justify the suspension or cancellation of its certificate.
This is a clear example of how the CAA has not been doing its job, has been misleading the public about aviation safety, and it's a good reason why the whole of the senior management of the CAA deserve to be sacked, along with the board.
Yanda officials refused to comment today on why the airline was grounded, but they did say all legal avenues are being explored in a desperate bid to relaunch the service. If the airline meets Civil Aviation Authority regulations, it could get a new operator certificate within days. Meanwhile, an investigation is underway into Tamworth airline Tamair after a door came open during a flight.
The door has 3 components, a top section, a lower section with 2 latches on it. It's quite possible that the forward latch may have come ajar and some air got in the cabin. Nevertheless, one of the passengers was able to close it fairly quickly.
It's believed the door wasn't closed properly by the pilot, and the company says he could be dismissed. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Each year at around this time, a little bit of madness takes over at the Newcastle markets. It's a special auction for a special product, the season's first box of cherries. And at prices like these, they sure must taste sweet. But it didn't stop there. The Fruitos went a little light-headed, no one wanting to be pipped at the post. But in the end, Frankie Frasca won the battle, even if the price was a bit right. That's about $1.50 for each cherry. The money will go to the farmhand appeal for our drought-stricken farmers. Frank is hoping to build on that in giving away the cherries at his shop today. All he wanted was a donation for people doing it tough on the land.
We're all in this together, and therefore, I think that we should open up our hearts and our purse and help each other, because in the foreign us, we're helping ourselves anyway, because they are the backbone of the country.
The Agriculture and Fisheries Minister headed west today to officially open a new technology resource centre at Narrabri's renamed Agriculture Research Station. The station is now called the Australian Cotton Research Institute in recognition of its increasing role in developing better production technology and crop varieties. Its new Technology Resource Centre will act as a shop front to pass on the benefits of that research to producers. Mr Causley believes it's research vital to Australia's international marketing capabilities.
Genetic technology does frighten me a little bit. There's no doubt that we are certainly out there right on the edges of technology, But, you know, the profits from it, if we do crack some of these things, are very big.
While genetic engineering may worry him, Mr Causley says proposals to divert the Clarence River to the drought-stricken west do not.
I'm not opposed to that idea. I think that people tend to get a little bit irrational about that at times. But I think the thing we must get through to them is that we're not tipping the river upside down and sending the whole river west. We're taking some of it.
The driver of the tabletop truck was travelling south when it collided with the petrol tanker at midday. Police believe the truck crossed to the wrong side of the road on a sharp bend. The driver of the truck from Rutherford was fatally injured, while the 34-year-old tanker driver from Urunga on the mid-north coast walked away uninjured.
The driver's side of the tabletop has actually contacted with the petrol tanker, and I doubt if the driver of the tabletop had much chance at all.
40,000 litres of petrol en route to Coffs Harbour remained sealed, but the prime mover's fuel tank was ruptured and diesel spilled onto the highway. The fire brigade mopped up the spillage. The highway was blocked for 2 hours while the wreckage was removed. These highway bends at Wootton form the second most dangerous black spot in the state, behind O'Sullivan's Gap, which is less than 10 kilometres away. Highway traffic has been diverted from Bulahdelah via the Lakes Way. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
This odd-looking contraption may just be the saviour for Willie the whale.
Which is really just a floating stretcher, that's all it is.
As most of the nation knows, Willie adopted the Manning River as home, but experts are worried he won't last too long out of his normal environment. After 10 weeks, he's already showing signs of losing condition. 2 rescue missions have failed before. For this attempt, a giant floating harness supported by 2 pontoons will be used. It's capable of carrying a 30-tonne load.
We estimate this whale will be around about 15 tonne. I think it's going to be a lot less actually, because it's getting quite debilitated now. Place the animal in it, inflate it and tow it outside the river.
The harness was given a test run on the Gold Coast this afternoon. The rescuers confident on Monday they can create a fairy tale ending for what's been an amazing story of man and Mother Nature. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Shane Thomas earned selection in the 4-man Australian junior team after winning the state rapid fire title. A member of the Cessnock club, Thomas has been shooting for the past 6 years, achieving some outstanding results in a sport which has been the domain of older competitors. With the year 2000 Games his ultimate goal, he attributes much of his success to his club mate Kel Vickers.
If I didn't have the help that he give, I wouldn't be here. He's give a great deal.
Not only will the trip to China be a different cultural experience, but competition-wise, the Australian team will confront a nation where pistol shooting has become a growth sport for all ages.
Well, there's roughly, I got told, 600 master grade shooters. Compared to here, there would be 50, and 65% over there are junior members, so it's going to be rather tough.
The local resident was on his way home from work around 7 o'clock last night when his ute veered to the left. A witness told police there was no apparent reason for the mishap. A roadside fence, which constitutes little more than a hand railing, pierced the lower centre of the windscreen and pinned the driver to the back of the seat by his left armpit. Rescuers sawed off the pipe and took the man to hospital with the remnant still embedded in his body. Police would not reveal the man's name except to say that he lives locally.
Last year's winner Madawi Prince is one of 3 local horses contesting the event, many believing Westburn Grant's mile record could be broken by several of the better chances. Young Mr Charles is likely to lead after drawing the rails, while Miracle Mile runner-up Sableye and We Own a Warrior are expected to fight out the finish. A victory by any of the field in a smart time could lead to further riches in the Miracle Mile.
And we've actually got the chairman of the Miracle Mile Invitation Committee being here on Saturday night, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that if they run the right time, they may find themselves being issued an invitation, or if not, putting themselves right at the top of the list.
In soccer, the opening night of the Newcastle Breakers Summer Sevens tournament is underway at Austral Park. 7 matches will be played tonight, with the 15-round competition continuing each Friday night till February, the final scheduled for March 3. And in Speedway, the Winfield Motordrome celebrates its 19th anniversary tomorrow night with the Big Bash Demolition Derby. 30 cars have entered, the survivor of the free-for-all receiving $1,500. Round 3 of the Super Sedan Top Gun series will also be contested, with Bob Brewer leading ahead of state champion John Pine. There was conjecture the 8 New South Welshmen on test duty in Pakistan may be rested for the 4-day international in Newcastle. But such reports have been quashed by the Australian Cricket Board's Alan Crompton, who's told the local association almost all will be available.
It will be, Paul, one of the closest things to Test cricket Newcastle cricket fans will have seen, because, as you're aware, the New South Wales side has 7 Test players currently in Pakistan. We believe all of those players will play, with the exception of Steve Waugh, who's out with that shoulder injury.
The tourists will be desperate to rid the memories of the 1986 disaster on No. 1 Sports Ground and gain the psychological advantage before the first test. Many of the English and New South Wales players will attend a Doug Walters Club lunch at Western Suburbs Leagues Club next Friday with guest speaker Aussie skipper Mark Taylor. Meantime, the Newcastle side has wound up preparations for Sunday's one-day state final against Randwick at the SCG, confident they can repeat their winning performance against Gordon 2 years ago.
You know, we've got Peter March coming back into the team, who's had some experience in Sydney, opening the bowling. Jeff Cook and Paul Dyson, 2 players who've also been out of Newcastle. They're very good players. They'll come back into the team and strengthen it.
The visitors were shown how all donations are tested for viruses before being separated into several blood products. Also helping to promote blood donation, Knights players Robbie Ross, Matthew Johns and Adam Muir enlisted a 4-legged friend. But there was a serious message behind the day. Donor levels have slowly been declining, and with the holiday season rapidly approaching, the blood bank is facing higher demands and fewer donations.
There is no substitute. Blood donation is a terrific altruistic, non-commercial gift that people can give to their fellow man.
Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
official, the Hunter Valley Coal Freight Line is on the market, and a spokesman for Transport Minister Baird said negotiations to sell it are underway. But the union is stunned by the announcement, saying it hasn't been party to any privatisation talks.
We're a bit... This is what the Eagles' Brad Boyd can look forward to, the chance to play in the world's toughest baseball league. The Sydney-based mechanic stands at well over 2 metres tall and was a late recruit for the Eagles, having spent his junior career with Auburn. He was spotted by an Expos scout during the opening games of the season.
He come in and signed Brad Boyd, so in March when we start spring training he'll go over there with us. And there's a couple other players on our team that I'm interested in, and Sammy Grant's one. It's a young player, and I think he's going to really be good one of these days.
Hodge claims that Grant is likely to have to decide between playing pro ball or college baseball, for which he has already received 2 offers. Meantime, the Eagles manager was pleased with his young side's performance in Perth over the weekend, despite not winning a game, which sees them slip to the bottom of the table. The Eagles lost 2 games by a run. Hodge is now likely to stabilise his lineup after the opening 12 encounters.
I've sort of juggled the lineup and played guys in different positions, but we're getting pretty close to. I'm going to try to get a sort of a set team to where we can be a little bit more competitive.
The Eagles have a bye this weekend and will play an internal match before taking on the Adelaide Giants the following weekend at Marathon Stadium.
The strong winds provided some anxious moments for the pilot of this single-engine Cessna. While taxiing at Whittingham Airfield south of Singleton around 10 o'clock this morning, a wind gust caught his plane, flipping it over. He escaped uninjured. At Nobby Signal Station, wind speeds of up to 105 kilometres an hour have been recorded today.
We normally get our strong westerlies in the end of August through to maybe the early September, but here we've got one in November, so that's a little unusual.
The gusty conditions have affected shipping movements in the port. The Korean vessel Hyundai Spirit will try to enter tonight after 2 failed attempts earlier today. The winds also caused havoc for firefighters. This blaze in the Wallaroo State Forest just north of Raymond Terrace was whipped up by gusts reaching 75 kilometres an hour. Despite this, several factors including recent backburning have helped contain the situation.
We've been very lucky to have a reasonably moist conditions and the temperature's not too bad, but if we went to high temperatures and low humidities, we could be into a lot more severe problems.
The fire has burnt 750 hectares of land. It's believed it was deliberately lit. Forest staff and bushfire officers will monitor this blaze and another in the Arimba State Forest 8 kilometres west of Wyong overnight. The strong winds have forced some state forest officers to issue a warning to bushwalkers about the dangers of falling trees. As a result, the Wadigan Mountains in Lake Macquarie have been closed to the general public and will remain so until the winds ease. Winds are expected to slow tonight, tipping 60 kilometres an hour tomorrow. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
For more than 40 years, the Newcastle Water Police have centred their operations on this building in Wharf Road. But now the service has little choice but to find a new home. Last year, the Honeysuckle Development Corporation took over the site from Public Works. With the change in title has come a huge hike in rent to $30,000 a year.
There's a fair slice out of the budget, and especially when you take into consideration we weren't paying rent beforehand, and we spent some $50,000 renovating the premises the year before last. So I think it's fairly steep.
Honeysuckle manager Robert Zulo defends the rent increase for both the Water Police and its neighbours, New South Wales Fisheries. He admits the valuable harbourside site is earmarked for a major redevelopment. However, he says the police and fisheries are not being forced out.
There is obviously going to be a point in our planning where we may have to remove them or relocate them, but we certainly haven't given anybody any notices to quit at this stage.
Fisheries is likely to move its operations to Salamander. However, it's more difficult for the police.
There are very few berths available on the harbour, and certainly there isn't any suitable office accommodation that I know of to house our Water Police.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Weather conditions on the Manning River were much clearer today. The scene was set for the National Parks and SeaWorld vessels to make a second attempt to put the rescue plan into action. Just before 8 o'clock, the whale was within the area boarded by the net boats, but it managed to escape before the nets closed it in. It was a matter of playing the waiting game before it completed its loop of the river and returned to the centre of the operation. The boats circled the animal, but again it got away.
When it did sense it, it moved at right angles at very high speed away from the nets before the overlap occurred between the two net boats.
Experts say they may have underestimated the speed of the animal.
We're looking at a change of equipment so we can actually speed up the process on the beach.
The highlight of today's operation was the whale breaching itself. The veterinarians on board the SeaWorld boat say it's a rare occurrence given the depth of the water. It may have been displaying its aggravation. The whale's health is the primary concern for those involved in the rescue operation. If it fails tomorrow, further attempts will be made over the weekend. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
The New South Wales team was announced shortly after the arrival of the Australian side at Mascot Airport this morning. Mark Taylor will captain the team for the first time in 11 months. The Blues at full strength apart from McGrath and the injured Steve Waugh. All-rounders Lee, Maxwell and McNamara have retained their positions, while Richard Cheekwee is 12th man. Despite their hectic tour, the New South Welshmen are looking forward to the match with England.
It should be a good match. Obviously it'll be a tough match, and it'll be good to get a bit of practice against them.
Back in Newcastle, the man in the hot seat is Ken Stace, who has the task of preparing the wicket for the four-day match. He's had the job for the last 20 years at number 1 Sports Ground, and at 56, this is likely to be his last against the Poms.
Oh yeah, you always feel there's a lot more pressure on you when you're preparing wickets for international games, you know.
England will arrive in Newcastle on Thursday afternoon.
A warm spring day at Newcastle's Nobby's Beach is a world away from the bloodshed in Bosnia that brought these 4 people together. Hassan Mesa and Sinad Bayrak-Taravik are the faces of the conflict that has overwhelmed their country since April 1992. Bayrak-Taravik is lucky to be alive. Newcastle's Dr Chris Howe is the doctor trying to repair the damage. Selma Mudjagik, an interpreter to help her countrymen cope with this strange new environment. Mr Messer has already had numerous operations in Newcastle and will have more. His friend 41-year-old Mr Bayrak-Taravik has all that to come.
The problem is that he can't eat anything solid, and so we aim to reconstruct his jaw.
It's part of a United Nations program that offers hope to a country that has little left. For its benefactors, it's a shining light in a life filled with the darkness of war.
They're really happy to be in Australia because both of them got a chance to have a treatment in Australia. In Bosnia, they are really hard.
The two constables from Cessnock Police were lucky to get out of the car unhurt. It crashed at around 5:45 yesterday evening, exploding into flames in Greta Street, Aberdare.
I'd say they were extremely lucky because it's quite evident that the fire occurred in a very short space of time.
The patrol car had been involved in a search for a blue sedan which was wanted by police for traffic matters. Today that car was in the lockup at Cessnock Police Station. It was found late last night. It's believed the police car was pulling alongside the vehicle at what's been called a slow speed when the incident occurred.
The vehicle suddenly diverged to the right and collided with the rear near side of the police vehicle. As a result of this, the police vehicle went off the southern shoulder of the road, collided with a steel post and burst into flames.
What started the fire is still being investigated, but surrounding grass also caught alight, disrupting trains on the nearby rail line for a short while. The police car, valued at around $30,000, will be written off.